Engage yourself fully, therefore, in the devotional service of the Lord, for only He can deliver us from this entanglement of materialistic existence. Although the Lord is attached to His material potency, He is aloof from her activities. Everything in this material world is happening by the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. In continuation of the previous verse, it is specifically mentioned here that Dhruva Mahārāja should engage himself in devotional service. Devotional service cannot be rendered to the impersonal Brahman feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whenever the word bhajasva appears, meaning engage yourself in devotional service, there must be the servant, service, and the served. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is served. The mode of activities to please Him is called service, and one who renders such service is called the servant. Another significant feature in this verse is that only the Lord and no one else is to be served. That is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. There is no need to serve the demigods who are just like the hands and legs of the Supreme Lord. When the Supreme Lord is served, the hands and legs of the Supreme Lord are automatically served. There is no need of separate service, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Tesham Aham Samudarta Mrityu Samsara Sagarat 12:7. This means the Lord, in order to show specific favor to the devotee, directs the devotee from within in such a way that ultimately he is delivered from the entanglement of material existence. No one but the Supreme Lord can help the living entity to be delivered from the entanglement of this material world. The material energy is a manifestation of one of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's varieties of potencies. Parasya Shaktir Vidaiva Shriyate. This material energy is one of the Lord's potencies, as much as heat and light are potencies of fire. The material energy is not different from the Supreme Godhead, but at the same time, He has nothing to do with the material energy. The living entity who is of the marginal energy is entrapped by the material energy on the basis of his desire to lord it over the material world. The Lord is aloof from this, but when the same living entity engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, then he becomes attached to this service. This situation is called yuktam. For devotees, the Lord is present even in the material energy. This is the inconceivable potency of the Lord. Material energy acts in the three modes of material qualities, which produce the action and reaction of material existence. Those who are not devotees become involved in such activities, whereas devotees who are dovetailed with the Supreme Personality of Godhead are freed from such action and reaction of the material energy. The Lord is therefore described herewith as Bhava Chidam, one who can give deliverance from the entanglement of material existence. It happens very quickly. It's a prompt that just beginning this process, people can be relieved very quickly from the complexities and chaos that's storming their minds. That they can, just beginning it, you can immediately get relief.
Yeah, that's like the saffron cloud.
Yeah.
You know about the saffron cloud?
Well, no, somebody made that up.
Yeah, no, I know. It's when you first come to Krishna consciousness and you first start chanting
You
and
feel liberated.
Yeah, you feel this change, and somebody calls it the saffron cloud. You're in the saffron cloud.
But you got to be careful because all of a sudden,
First.
you take it for granted and you're out of it. And you don't know how you got, I didn't take it seriously. I'm not still in the fire, chanting right properly.
Yeah, interesting here that they're entrapped. Prabhupada says in the purport, they're living it by the desire to lord it over material energy. You want to control the material energy, and that's what entraps. The desire to enjoy, to control, and that's the problem. So it requires surrender. No. You're
Yeah,
a servant.
Giving up pleasing our senses, mind and senses, and focusing on Krishna's service for his pleasure. Like, you know, I'm going to eat this orange because it's cheap. No, I'm going to offer this orange to Krishna because he'll enjoy it.
Right. Yeah.
Like that.
So I don't know. This is always a good one because I was just coming into Krishna consciousness, and I was at New Vrindavan, and I was in the kitchen helping out, and I was watching one of the Matajis make a prep, and she just kept pouring in all the sugar, and it was just like, I'm like, gosh, that's a lot of sugar, you know. Sure you need so much? She goes, Krishna loves sugar, and he loves things sweet. And that was my first, like, yeah, like, in other words, it doesn't matter what you think, because I was like a total neophyte. Krishna loves it, and that's what counts. So it was giving me a good idea of Krishna consciousness. It was all about what he loves, not what anybody else thinks.
Yeah, I was criticized one time by an Indian store owner here in Cleveland back in the 80s because I was buying so much butter to make ghee. And he says, why don't you just buy, you know, like the peanut oil or something and mix it with the butter and not buy so much butter? And I go, no, it's not for me, it's for Krishna.
Yeah.
And he still wanted to argue about that, but that's why. Maybe I would have done that if I wasn't a devotee. You know?
See, that ties in with the idea of sacrifice. Sacrifice for Vishnu must be performed. So that ties in.
Right.
The cooking is a sacrifice for Vishnu. And instead of engaging for, you know, our own enjoyment, we're sacrificing that in offering to Krishna. Yeah, and it has to be performed, sacrifice for Vishnu. Yeah.
And he was kind of a, you know, even though he's a gentleman, he was kind of suja-minded. And I just said, you know, I don't have any bad habits. Like, I don't smoke or drink or go to the movies or play the lottery. So I can afford to buy the butter.
Yeah, he says it. He's said that the whole time we've been married. Yeah, whatever he buys, and it seems like, oh, that's excessive. Yeah, if you have no bad habits, why not? And it's all for Krishna.
The store owner was a merchant also. He thinks in terms of dollars and cents.
Right.
Well, he was making more money, you know.
Yeah, what was he complaining
Yeah,
about?
but it still is like, you know, he could see, why are you doing this? I think he knew I was a devotee, so that, you know, there's probably a subtle envy, you know, maybe, you know.
Maybe he just wanted to hear you glorify Krishna.
Maybe, yeah. Then I asked his son, his son was like 12 years old. You know, they had a big sweet shop there, right? All those, and I go, so what's your favorite? He goes, I don't need any of this junk.
Oh my goodness.
The kid said that.
I go, what do you eat? Like Snickers or, you know? He goes, yeah, something like that.
Oh my God.
The boy said that, the kid.
Yeah, he became a Wall Street like it.
Okay, move on. Text 7. Okay. So it says Swayambhuva Manu, and he's instructing his grandson Dhruva, and he says, my dear Dhruva Mahārāja, son of Mahārāja Uttānapāda, we have heard that you are constantly engaged in transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known for his lotus navel. You are therefore worthy to take all benedictions from us. Please, therefore, ask without hesitation whatever benediction you want from me. Prabhupada's purport. Dhruva Mahārāja, the son of King Uttānapāda, was already known throughout the universe as a great devotee of the Lord, constantly thinking of his lotus feet. Such a pure, uncontaminated devotee of the Lord is worthy to have all the benedictions that can be offered by the demigods. He does not have to worship the demigods separately for such benedictions. Kuvera is the treasurer of the demigods, and he is personally offering whatever benediction Dhruva Mahārāja would like to have from him. Srila Bilvamangal Thakur stated, therefore, that for persons who engage in devotional service of the Lord, all material benedictions wait like maidservants. Mukti Devi is just waiting at the door of a devotee to offer liberation, or more than that, at any time. To be a devotee is therefore an exalted position. Simply by rendering transcendental loving service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can have all the benedictions of the world without separate endeavor. Lord Kuvera said to Dhruva Mahārāja that he had heard that Dhruva was always in samadhi, or thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord. In other words, he knew that for Dhruva Mahārāja there was nothing desirable within the three material worlds. He knew that Dhruva would ask for nothing but to remember the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord constantly. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. How did Kuvera get in here? I thought it was Swayambhuva Manu.
Because the Yakṣas are his descendants.
Oh no, it does come. Yeah, in text 2.
They were talking about it last week too.
Yeah, the great sage Maitreya said that Kuvera, the most blessed master of the treasury, learned of this news about the Yakṣas. Okay, so this is Kuvera, it's not Swayambhuva Manu, I'm sorry. This conversation with Dhruva is Kuvera speaking to him. Okay, treasurer of the demigods. Sorry about that. Okay. Maybe. See how I confuse one more. Text 8. The great sage Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidura, when thus asked to accept a benediction from Kuvera, the Yakṣarāja, king of the Yakṣas, Dhruva Mahārāja, that most elevate." So Kuvera is the king of the Yakṣas. That's why Kuvera was there. Kuvera, he's the king of the Yakṣas. Okay. Dhruva Mahārāja, that most elevated pure devotee who was intelligent and a thoughtful king, begged that he might have unflinching faith in and remembrance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for thus a person can cross over the ocean of nescience very easily, although it is very difficult for others to cross. Prabhupada's purport. According to the opinion of expert followers of Vedic rites, there are different types of benedictions in terms of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. These 4 principles are known as Chaturvargas. Of all the Chaturvargas, the benediction of liberation is considered to be the highest in this material world. To be enabled to cross over material nescience is known as the highest purushartha, or benediction for the human being. But Dhruva Mahārāja wanted a benediction which surpasses even the highest purushartha, liberation. He wanted the benediction that he might constantly remember the lotus feet of the Lord. This stage of life is called Panchama Purushartha. When a devotee comes to the platform of Panchama Purushartha, simply engaging in devotional service to the Lord, the 4th Purushartha, liberation, becomes very insignificant in his eyes. Yeah, Panchama refers to the fifth. So it's talking about regular Purushartha is liberation, sense gratification, the four. And but Panchama Purushartha then goes to the platform of engaging in devotional service. And that's the one he wanted. He didn't want just the fourth liberation. He wanted to go beyond that. Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati has stated in this connection that for a devotee, liberation is a hellish condition of life. As for sense gratification, which is available in the heavenly planets, the devotee considers it to be a will-o'-the-wisp, having no value in life. Yogis endeavor to control the senses, but for a devotee, controlling the senses is no difficulty at all. The senses are compared to serpents, but for a devotee, the serpent's poisoned teeth are broken. Thus, Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati has analyzed all kinds of benedictions available in this world, and he has clearly declared that for a devotee, they are all of no significance. Dhruva Mahārāja was also a Mahabhagavata, or a first-class pure devotee, and his intelligence was very great, Mahamati. Unless one is very intelligent, one cannot take to devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Naturally, anyone who is a first-class devotee must be a first-class intelligent person and therefore not interested in any kind of benediction within this material world. Dhruva Mahārāja was offered a benediction by the King of the Kings. Kuvera, the treasurer of the demigods, whose only business is to supply immense riches to persons within this materialistic world, is described as the King of Kings, because unless one is blessed by Kuvera, one cannot become a king. The King of Kings personally offered Dhruva Mahārāja any amount of riches, but he declined to accept them. He's described, therefore, as Mahamati, very thoughtful or highly intelligent. Wow, King of Kings, that's the first time I heard it described like that.
Yeah. King of Kings. Okay, text 9. The son of Idapida, Lord Kuvera, was very pleased, and happily he gave Dhruva Mahārāja the benediction he wanted. Thereafter he disappeared from Dhruva's presence, and Dhruva Mahārāja also returned to his capital city. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Kuvera, who is known as the son of Idavida, was very pleased with Dhruva Mahārāja because he did not ask him for anything materially enjoyable. Kuvera is one of the demigods, so one may put forward the argument, why did Dhruva Mahārāja take benediction from a demigod? The answer is that for a Vaishnava, there is no objection in taking benediction from a demigod, if it is favorable for advancing Krishna consciousness. The gopis, for example, worshipped Katyayani, the demigoddess, but the only benediction they wanted from the goddess was to have Krishna as their husband. A Vaishnava is not interested in asking any benediction from the demigods, nor is he interested in asking benediction from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said in the Bhagavatam that liberation can be offered by the Supreme Person, but even if a pure devotee is offered liberation by the Supreme Lord, he refuses to accept it. Dhruva Mahārāja did not ask Kuvera for transference to the spiritual world, which is called liberation. He simply asked that wherever he would remain, whether in the spiritual or material world, he would always remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A Vaishnava is always respectful to everyone. So when Kuvera offered him a benediction, he did not refuse it. But he wanted something which would be favorable to his advancement in Krishna consciousness. It's a long one. Do you want to read it?
That's a rough one, you know. Not to ask for liberation from the material world. And that's such a high standard, you know. Wherever I am, it doesn't matter as long as I can remember you. I mean, that's where the safest place to be, but it's a tough one, you know, because.
Well, you know, Prabhupada says in this lecture about how, you know, it's easier, you know, to get liberation or whatever, but to get real bhakti, then it's like that's more difficult, because what is it that Krishna becomes your, like, what is it? I terrible at, like, your servant, like he's indebted to you, not in debt. You know, do you know?
He gives himself to his devotee.
Yeah, and that's like right. So.
A pure devotee doesn't have any fear of the material world, because, you know, it's just like if you go see a Broadway play, it could be a play about war, you know, but the actors, you know, they're actors. You know, they're going home to their, you know, penthouses afterward, you know, play. So the pure devotee, you know, he's doing some service for the Lord in the material world. He has no fear of it, and he doesn't have anything, he has no connection with it. He's just acting out Leela for the Lord's purpose, of retrieving lost conditioned souls. So he may appear like he has those qualities of being controlled by the material world to some, but he doesn't have those. It's like a child can see a play and you'll think those are the real people. Text 10. As long as he remained at home, Dhruva Mahārāja performed many great ceremonial sacrifices in order to please the enjoyer of all sacrifices, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prescribed ceremonial sacrifices are especially meant to please Lord Vishnu, who is the objective of all such sacrifices, and who awards the resultant benediction. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. In Bhagavad Gita 3.9, it is said, Yagartat karmano nyatralokayam karma bandha. One should act or work only in order to please the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, he becomes entangled in the resultant reactions. According to the 4 divisions of Varna and Ashram, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are especially advised to perform great ceremonial sacrifices and to distribute their accumulated money very liberally. Dhruva Mahārāja, as a king and ideal Kshatriya, performed many such sacrifices, giving very liberally in charity. Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are supposed to earn their money and accumulate great riches. Sometimes they do it by acting sinfully. Kshatriyas are meant to rule over a country. Dhruva Mahārāja, for example, in the course of ruling, had to fight and kill many Yakṣas. Such action is necessary for Kshatriyas. As such, Kshatriya should not be a coward, and he should not be nonviolent. To rule over the country, he has to act violently. Kshatriyas and Vaishyas are therefore especially advised to give in charity at least 50% of their accumulated wealth. In Bhagavad Gita, it is recommended that even though one enters the renounced order of life, he still cannot give up the performance of yajna, dana, and tapasya. They are never to be given up. Tapasya is meant for the renounced order of life. Those who are retired from worldly activities should perform tapasya, penances, and austerities. Those who are in the material world, the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas, must give in charity. Brahmacharis in the beginning of their lives should perform different kinds of yajnas. Dhruva Mahārāja is an ideal king. Dhruva Mahārāja, as an ideal king, practically emptied his treasury by giving in charity. A king is not meant to simply realize taxes from the citizens and accumulate wealth to spend in sense gratification. World monarchy has failed ever since kings began to satisfy their personal senses with the taxes accumulated from the citizens. Of course, whether the system is monarchy or democracy, the same corruption is still going on. At the present moment, there are different parties in the democratic government, but everyone is busy trying to keep their posts or trying to keep their political party in power. They have very little time to think of the welfare of the citizens, whom they oppress with heavy taxes in the form of income tax, sales tax, and many other taxes. People sometimes have 80 to 90% of their income taken away, and these taxes are lavishly spent for the high salaries drawn by the officers and rulers. Formerly, the taxes accumulated from the citizens were spent for performing great sacrifices, as enjoined in the Vedic literature. At the present moment, recommended in the Shastras, at the present moment, however, almost all forms of sacrifice are not at all possible. Therefore, it is recommended in the Shastras that people should perform Sankirtan Yajna. Any householder, regardless of his position, can perform this Sankirtan Yajna without expenditure. All the family members can sit down together and simply clap their hands and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Somehow or other, everyone can manage to perform such a yajna and distribute prasad to the people in general. That is quite sufficient for this age of Kali. The Krishna consciousness movement is based on this principle. Chant the Hare Krishna mantra every moment as much as possible, both inside and outside of the temples, and as far as possible distribute prasad. This process can be accelerated with the cooperation of state administrators and those who are producing the country's wealth. Simply by liberal distribution of prasad and sankirtan, the whole world can become peaceful and prosperous. Generally, in all the material sacrifices recommended in the Vedic literatures, there are offerings to the demigods. This demigod worship is especially meant for less intelligent men. Actually, the result of such sacrifices goes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam. He is actually the enjoyer of all sacrifices. His name is therefore Yajna Purusha. Although he was a great devotee and had nothing to do with these sacrifices, still, to set an example to his people, Dhruva Mahārāja performed many sacrifices and gave all his wealth in charity. For as long as he lived as a householder, he never spent a farthing for his sense gratification. In this verse, the word karma pala padam is very significant. The Lord awards everyone different kinds of karma as the individual living entities desire. He is the super soul present within the heart of everyone, and he is so kind and liberal that he gives everyone full facilities to perform whatever acts one wants. Then the result of the action is also enjoyed by the living entity. If anyone wants to enjoy or lord it over the material nature, the Lord gives him full facilities. But he becomes entangled in the resultant reactions. Similarly, if one wants to engage himself fully in devotional service, the Lord gives him full facilities. And thus the devotee enjoys the result. The Lord is therefore known as Karma Pala Prada. Yeah, sit down and chant, distribute prasad. Good.
Yeah, the Prabhupada says in the temples and outside the temples.
At home, anywhere.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I was still floating on that reading here. Okay, text 11. Dhruva Mahārāja rendered devotional service unto the Supreme, the reservoir of everything, with unrelenting force. While carrying out his devotional service to the Lord, he could see that everything is situated in him only, and that he is situated in all living entities. The Lord is called Achyuta because he never fails in his prime duty to give protection to his devotees. Prabhupada's purport: not only did Dhruva Mahārāja perform many sacrifices, but he carried out his transcendental occupation of engagement in devotional service of the Lord. The ordinary karmis who want to enjoy the results or fruitive activities are concerned only with sacrifices and ritualistic ceremonies as enjoined in Vedic Shastras. Although Dhruva Mahārāja performed many sacrifices in order to be an exemplary king, he was constantly engaged in devotional service. The Lord always protects his surrendered devotee. A devotee can see that the Lord is situated in everyone's heart, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridesha junatishtati. Ordinary persons cannot understand how the Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart. But a devotee can actually see him. Not only can the devotee see him outwardly, but he can see with spiritual vision that everything is resting in the Supreme Personality of Godhead as described in Bhagavad Gita. Matstani sarva bhutani. That is the vision of a Maha Bhagavata. He sees everything others see, but instead of seeing merely the trees, the mountains, the cities, or the sky, he sees only his worshipful Supreme Personality of Godhead in everything, because everything is resting in him only. This is the vision of the Mahabhagavata. In summary, a Mahabhagavata, a highly elevated pure devotee, sees the Lord everywhere as well as within the heart of everyone. This is possible for devotees who have developed elevated devotional service to the Lord. As stated in the Brahma Samhita 538, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena. Only those who have smeared their eyes with the ointment of love of Godhead can see everywhere the Supreme Lord face to face. It's not possible by imagination or so-called meditation. Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
That is just that last line. I mean, it's just so beautifully poetic and so
On Sankirtan,
it's just such
you kind of forced to meditate that Krishna's, everyone's, Krishna's, the Lord's within the heart of everyone, because you're trying to like preach to them. And you can see, so many of them are indifferent or, don't care or whatever. But then you're looking at it more, that Krishna's in the heart, For the first time, of the day, you really think, you chanted your rounds in the morning, you went to the temple, but now you're thinking, I can see Krishna's in the heart of everyone walking by. You start being trained in that way.
yeah.
Because you're thinking, instead of thinking, this person's like not nice or indifferent, the Lord's in his heart. He's walking by here because the Lord directed him and said, here's your chance.
Yeah, I was looking at also about devotional service. Elevated devotional service to the Lord. So we know there's 9 types of devotional service. Prahlad Maharaj tells us hearing, chanting, remembering. It's not like remembering something in the past. It's like remembering right now. That kind of remembering. Hearing, chanting, remembering. Worshipping, praying. And one of them is making friends with, for goodness sake. I think that's what happens on Sankirtan. You're making friends with the Lord, Because in order to get somebody to engage, there has to be some friendly thing. Is making friends with the Lord on Sankirtan. And what's some of the carrying out the orders, and like Ambarish Maharaj, whatever you have, you're using in the service, everything. So there's different types of devotional service. nine different types. Where the prophet says, you can do all 9 of them, but if you only do 1 of them, that's okay. Yeah.
Our good fortune. Anyway, should I read again?
Yeah, read it.
Okay, so text 12. Dhruva Mahārāja was endowed with all the godly qualities. He was very respectful to the devotees of the Supreme Lord and very kind to the poor and innocent, and he protected religious principles. With all these qualifications, he was considered to be the direct father of all the citizens. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The personal qualities of Dhruva Mahārāja described herein are the exemplary qualities of a saintly king. Not only a king, but also the leaders of a modern democratic or impersonal government must be qualified with all these godly characteristics. Then the citizens of the state can be happy. It is clearly stated here that the citizens thought of Dhruva Mahārāja as their father. As a child, depending on the able father, is completely satisfied, so the citizens of the state, being protected by the state or the king, should remain satisfied in every respect. At the present moment, however, there is no guarantee by the government or even the primary necessities of life in the state, namely the protection of the lives and property of the citizens. One word is very significant in this connection. Brahmanyan. How do I say that? Brahmanyan. Yeah. Brahmanyan. Dhruva Mahārāja was very devoted to the Brahmanas, who engaged in the study of the Vedas and thereby know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are always busy propagating Krishna consciousness. The state should be very respectful to societies that distribute God consciousness all over the world. But unfortunately, at the present moment, there is no state or government support given to such movements. As for good qualities, it is very difficult to find anyone in state administration with any good qualities. The administrators simply sit in their administrative posts and say no to every request, as if they were paid to say no to the citizens. Another word, Dina Vatsalam, is very significant also. The state head should be very kind to the innocent. Unfortunately, in this age, the state agents and the presidents draw good salaries from the state, and they pose themselves as very pious, but they allow the running of slaughterhouses where innocent animals are killed. If we try to compare the godly qualities of Dhruva Mahārāja to the qualities of modern statesmen, we can see that there is no actual comparison. Dhruva Mahārāja was present in the Satya Yuga, as will be clear from the next verses. He was the ideal king in Satya Yuga. The government administration in the present age, Kali Yuga, is bereft of all God qualities. Considering all these points, the people today have no alternative but to take to Krishna consciousness for protection of religion, life, and property.
Yeah, it's right now.
It is. It's Kali Yuga.
It seems normal to us because we're living in it, you know, the nonsense that's going on, all the sinful activity and the mismanagement and the corruption. It's like, it It's like when you're in a bowling alley for a long time, you know how loud it is in there? You don't even hear how loud it is until you step outside and you go, wow, that was really loud in there. It's like when we hear about I know, I was just looking at this just recently, that last day or two, then we hear, because of Lord Ramachandra, the ideal king, and he showed that the citizens came first. They were like his children. And even before his own personal life, he gave, so the ideal king, Ram Raj. So here Dhruva Mahārāja is of that similar caliber. And they all, at the beginning of Kali Yuga, that's all gone. You know, it's all gone, the Kali Yuga. And when we hear about it now, sometimes it seems like, you know, the story of Rapunzel, let down your hair, and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, you know, it seems like, oh, those are nice stories. No, they're not stories, they're histories. It's the history of the human race. This is the history, that this is what it was like. Real leadership is what it was like. And so we have to just hear about it now. And I was wondering if, because of this Sankirtan movement, that we might actually see, you know, some really highly qualified devotee leadership in general. And I mentioned that to someone, and they said, well, let's just start with, you know, our movement, see if we can get some really qualified leaders in our movement. Then we'll take the world on. I thought that was a pretty good answer. But, I mean, our situation, we're just so numb to it, like being in that bowling alley. And then if it can just pierce that numbness, we can get just some little bit of a taste of what a real monarch is like, a real leadership, who the citizens he considers them his family members, not just the people, but the animals. That kind of leadership, a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just get some little inkling of what that was. It's really eye-opening. At least for me, I'm like, that Ramayan really like tipped me over the edge. I'm so appreciative for sending me those links.
Where are you now?
I finished, and now I'm listening to some narrations of Ramayan. I can't stop.
Yeah.
But right now, everybody, including the devotees, they're still kind of living on the modern factory nut and bolt society. We're building the nuts and bolts, and you know, the parampara is preparing us mentally for that to end, and that's when it'll begin happening. Yeah, it's, you know, like you said, it's like a bowling alley. All these things are happening, and no one knows what to do. You know, about it. Just they don't even understand it, and they're just going along with it. But you know, Prabhupada gave notice. Okay, this is ending, and this is how you carry on. You know, there's not going to be the nuts and bolts anymore. You know, the labor will be in growing food and things like that.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the economics. How do I support myself and my family? So I'm taking part in what's going on, right? Although a lot of people are trying to come out and live in the woods somewhere, but it's a transition time, that's for sure. Yeah.
You can see that transition's being prepared right now. Maybe we won't live to see the switch, but we're well into it.
This is the siege right here. The siege of God-conscious civilization right here.
Right.
You want to read one more
That's
or
it.
what? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was good reading.
next week.
Thank you for your association.
Thank
Lord
you
is
for
assembled
yours.
devotees.
Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Radha.
Hari Bol.